Hello, everyone. My name is Samia Ashraf. I am a Women Tech Makers ambassador and a Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart. And I'm also a regular speaker at DevMina. So, usually you will find me talking about in depth topics in Flutter. But today I've chosen a different topic, which is Introduction to Flutter app development and some of the best practices. So if you're someone who's just getting started with Flutter, or if you want to know why should you select Flutter for app development, then this session is for you. So let us look at our agenda today. So I will be starting with what is Flutter. So I'll tell you what is Flutter and what apps or what companies use Flutter to build their apps and why should you consider using Flutter. And we will also discuss some example of how Flutter app is built or what are the components in building a Flutter app. Finally, we will discuss widget hierarchy. So how everything is placed in Flutter. Let's begin with what is Flutter. Now, by definition, Flutter is an open source framework by Google that is used to build beautiful, natively compiled, and multi platform applications all from a single code base. Now, that is what the definition says, but let me break up this definition into different parts so that you understand better. Now, Flutter is an open source framework by Google. So, what is open source framework? So, open source framework or open source in general, what it means is, let's say that there is a piece of software. Now, Google has put the code for Flutter, and let's say you want to enhance some of these features or you want to contribute to this particular software by sharing your ideas, by sharing your examples of how you can make the framework better. So, what it does is this piece of software will be open to accept updates and modifications from others. So, what happens is that Flutter, so there will be it's not just Google who is constantly making Flutter better, it is also other developers who are contributing to make Flutter a better framework. And this is used for building beautiful, natively compiled multi-platform applications. So you write one single code base for Flutter. Let's say you're building an app for Android platform and you write some code in Flutter. Now this exact code is also going to run on iOS and also Mac OS, Windows OS, and also the web. And that is what it means by multi-platform applications. So one code base is going to run on multiple platforms and it will be natively compiled. So whenever you run it on an Android device, the Flutter code gets compiled to it will be natively compiled so that it will run on Android. And if it is iOS, it will be compiled in a way that it is going to run on iOS platforms. So this is one of the most powerful features of Flutter, that from one single code base, you can run the app in multiple platforms. So some of the apps or some of the well-known companies that use Flutter are Alibaba.com. We also have eBay, BMW, Toyota, Times, and also the Philips app. And the so if they write one single code base, it's going to run on mobile, web, desktop, and embedded devices. So this particular feature is going to save lots of time, and it is also going to save uh, lots of developers, because now you're not going to need five different developers for five platforms. Just one Flutter developer is going to write the code and it will be natively compiled to run on different platforms. So there will be a massive time save. Now, that was about Flutter and the companies that use Flutter. Now, let me tell you why you should be using Flutter. So, like we discussed, single code base for most of the platforms. Right now, it supports for Windows OS, Mac OS, Android, iOS, and Linux. And in future, there are also going to be many more platforms. Now, the reason, since you're a beginner or someone who's just gotten started with Flutter, this is the right framework for you because it uses Dart. Now, two things. Flutter is a framework that is used to, that is, so Flutter is a framework that uses Dart programming language to build apps. Now, Dart here is a programming language. So whatever you write inside Flutter is a programming language called Dart. And Dart is very much similar to C, which is extremely easy to learn. So if you're someone without any programming experience, you will find Dart a lot more simpler because it's a very straightforward language. And if you learn Dart, you can start building the Flutter applications. So it will become very much easier for you. So first start with Dart, learn all of the data structures, loops, all of those concepts, and then start building the Flutter applications. You'll find it a lot more simpler. And you will also get a grasp of how things work in Flutter. And that is also how I started. Some other features of Flutter are it is fast. The code compilation is very quick. So when you write the code in Flutter and it gets compiled or it gets natively compiled to Android, the compilation time is very quick, not just for Android, but for most of the platforms. So in that way, it's going to run fast on all of the devices. So obviously, when you run your Flutter app, the code has to get compiled. So this compilation time is very quick, and because of that, the app will run very quick on the devices. The next feature is the productivity. So one of the very key features of Flutter is the hot reload. Now in this GIF, if you see, if I change something on the code, it automatically gets reloaded on the screen. So this feature is called as hot reload. So hot reload is where even if small change you make in the code and you hot reload the app is going to show you what change you made. So obviously, this is going to save lots of time when you're building bigger applications because nobody likes to write a piece of code or update a piece of code and then run the app all from the beginning. That is going to take time. But if it is a small change, you can just use the hot reload function and then the UI will be automatically updated. And this is very much useful when you're building UI. And Flutter is also flexible because you must be wondering if it is a single code base that is going to run on multiple platforms, then what about the UI? How is the UI going to look on a mobile and how is it going to look in the web? Because they both are going to have different device dimensions. So that there is a solution for this as well. It's called as screen adaptability. So we will discuss this in the next screens. So, but for now, flexibility is another key feature of Flutter. So everything in Flutter is built using widgets. Now, this is a screen example. So this screen is built using Flutter. Now you're going to notice there is a back button and there is a like button demo text. These are two different widgets. So the back button here is a widget. The like button demo is another widget. And this blue color bar that you see, that is also a widget called as app bar. And everything, the icons and the text here are also widgets. So Flutter UI or a Flutter screen is nothing but a combination of widgets. And when I said that Flutter is an open source framework, the developers are constantly working on adding new, more and more widgets that is going to help you in saving time and using the widgets. So here I have some examples. So animated progress button. Now let's say you're using this button, this animated button in 10 different places in the app. So obviously you will have to write code for this, right? So you can save time by actually using this widget from pub.dev. So pub.dev is a place where there will be the where or the Flutter widgets are available. So you can use this widget and then you don't have to code it 10 different times. Just use it once and you can reuse it over and over. So yeah, and everything will have a solution. So if there is a UI component that you are not sure how it has to be coded, you can go to pub.dev and check if that particular feature has a widget for itself. Otherwise, you will have to code it from scratch. And by using these widgets, you're going to save time by coding less. So like I said, you can reuse those widgets, and in this reusability, you're going to save time. And you will also notice that the widgets here are not just simple widgets. There are lots of widgets that contain animation, that contain the state management, and so many different ones for the UI as well. Now, that was about what is Flutter and why you should be using Flutter, and that the widgets are the basic components of building a Flutter app. Now, let us look at how we can use these widgets in our app. So, how can we use them? Now, with that, steps to build a simple Flutter app. What should a Flutter app basically consist of? Now, when I'm building an application, I would want couple of things, like for example, onboarding screens. Now, onboarding screen is something that is going to appear before the login page. And using this onboarding, I have an example here. So onboarding screens are basically used to tell your user what your app is about. What does your app do? So this message can be delivered to the user using the onboarding screens. Some apps also have something called as splash screens. So splash screen is like a small a 2-3 second animation video or a GIF that appears before when you instantly open the app. And some apps will have a combination of both, a splash screen and an onboarding screen. Now, in this onboarding screen, let us look at one onboarding screen. This screen here has an image. It has a cashback text. It also has another smaller text beneath the cashback text. And then it has some 3 circles. Now, these circles are nothing but it's used to swipe to go to the next screen. So there are a total of 3 screens. And on the first screen, you will notice this dot has a darker color because it's indicating that it's the first screen, second screen, and then third screen. So the way the widgets here are arranged is using a column. Now, column is also a widget. So column is a widget that is going to wrap these inside widgets. Inside the column, we're going to use an image to display this image. And then we have a text for this text and another text and then some circles or containers. And the way we are going to use an image is there are multiple ways of using it, depends on where the image is. Let's say my image exists somewhere on the internet. Then I'm going to say image.network and then the URL of that image. So this is one way of using that image. And you always have to make sure that the URL this link is always correct, because if this link is incorrect, then your image will not appear. And there is also a text widget. Now, how will I display a text? So the way you can display a text is using the text widget. Text widget is going to take the actual text or the text value that you want to display. In this case, it is a cashback text, and then text align to tell where the text should be present, if it should be on the right side, center, or the left side. And we are also going to give some styling to this widget. So because sometimes not all the text widgets will be same, right? They will have different styling in them. So this here, I'm going to make the text bold by saying font weight dot bold. And I'm also going to give some font size to this. Let's say 22. You can, it's an integer number, or you can also make it a double number. And then also we are going to give it some color. So this way I can build a text widget by giving it different features, different values. So this is how the widgets can be written. And both of these widgets are going to be inside the column widget because they are arranged in a column. So if they were arranged in a row, I would, instead of column, I would use a row. So that is about the onboarding screens. The other feature that I like to add is authentication screens. In case, if I'm building an app and there are some screens which I only want authenticated users to see, then I'm going to build the authentication part. And authentication part is basically the login, sign up, forgot password, sign in by phone number. So these are the authentication screens. And here also we are going to have column widget, and you're going to notice that there is something called as email and password. And this widget is different from the previous widget because here this widget is going to expect for an input, because when I click on the email, then there is going to be a keyboard that is going to prompt me to enter the email. So this widget where I have the email is actually a text form field, because whenever I have these fields, like for example, email and password, I'm always going to wrap it using form, because when someone enters their email or their password, you might want to validate it, because if the email format is incorrect, then you will end up submitting an incorrect email, which is not correct, right? It's a wastage of resources because you'll be calling an API and the email is wrong. So you can validate this email in the front end, and for that, I'll be using something called as text form field. So text form field has a feature called as validator. And this is used to validate the text that was entered. So if it is an email, I'm going to write the code here to validate the email. For password, there will be a different validation technique. So that is going to come here. And when I save this form, what needs to run is going to come on the onSaved feature. You can, for this text form field, you can also give it the decoration. And this email, what is written here is nothing but hint text. So when I type on something, the email is going to be erased. The email will only be shown when the field is empty. And there is also a feature of text form field called auto validate mode. Now, auto validate mode means whenever you're entering the input, whenever you're entering the email input, it's constantly going to validate. It's always going to validate and tell you that the email entered is correct or wrong. And same goes for the phone number. You can also use validation on the phone number so that whenever you're entering a phone number, it's going to validate it against the country code. And sometimes when we are entering phone number or when we are entering OTP, most of the times it is numbers. So that is another feature of text form field, which I don't have here, but it's called keyboard type. And you can say text input type, or the type of text that has to be entered is a number. And this the key feature is the screen adaptability in a Flutter app. Now, because with one code base you can run the app in multiple platforms, that comes with certain challenges, which is how is the UI going to render, because a mobile UI is going to be very much different from a tablet or a desktop UI. And also in the web, the UI is going to be entirely different. Now we can solve this issue. So there are multiple packages in the pub.dev that is going to help us with it. So one of the packages that I use is responsive builder. Responsive builder is going to solve the problem in a way that it is going to have uh, it is going to have a feature called sizing information. So sizing information is used to check what is the platform or what is the device type that the app is running. So we can use responsive builder to check what device the app is running on, and if it is of the type device screen type dot desktop, then we are going to draw the widget that, or we are going to change the size of the screen as per the desktop. If it is a tablet, then we are going to change the size as per the tablet, and if it is watch, then watch, or if it's a mobile, then it's going to be as per the mobile dimension. So this is one of the ways. Actually, there are multiple ways how you can solve it, and most of those are present in, actually all of those are present in pub.dev, and responsive builder is one of them. So it's responsive underscore builder if you want to check. And another thing that you need, another step is routing to a new screen. So obviously, when you're building an app, some it might have more than one screen, and you would want to navigate the user from one screen to other screen. So let's say like the push of a button. So when the user clicks on a button, then you might want to push them to a new screen. So let's say that we have an elevated button that has a text go to new screen. And when you click on this go to new screen button, it's going to push you to a second route. So the way we push is using navigator.push, and then you will pass the correct current context and material page route. So in place of, so if the new widget name is second route, you're going to write it as second route. And again, this button can also be styled. There are different ways of styling it. And when the user has already entered the new page, and if you want to push them back to the um, old page, then how we can do that is using navigator.pop. Same button in the second screen when you click is going to pop the new screen, and then it is going to push you to the first screen. So push here, this navigator.push means going forward from one screen to second screen. So navigator.pop means when you're already in the second screen, it is going to pop the second screen. So you're going to end up in the first screen. So this is how it works. And let's say that you're building a very complex application, then you might want to refer to some routing methods. So this kind of routing method is used for fairly simpler apps. But when your app is gets bigger and bigger, it's always a best idea to best practice to use the routing methods. Otherwise, the routing can get very complicated. And in your widget tree, you'll end up having lots of routes, which is not a good practice. And lastly, let us look at what is widget hierarchy. So earlier I said that everything in a Flutter screen is made up of widgets. So here I have a text which says you have pushed the button this many times and then a number. So everything here inside the screen is wrapped using column. So column as in one widget, and below that or above that you can place other widgets. And at the bottom right, I have a circle button, which is called as floating action button. And so this button usually comes in a circle, and this is not a part of the column because this will come by default. So when you're using something called as scaffold is what holds everything together. You can then add floating action button. It doesn't have to be inside the column. And previously I said this is an app bar. App bar is another feature of scaffold. You can place the floating action button and the app bar under scaffold, but the column is going to be inside the body of the scaffold. So this the Flutter inspector is how we can inspect different widgets in the UI. So that's all for today's session. Does anyone have any questions? So any prerequisites for this course? So prerequisites would be learning Dart. So Dart is very important because essentially the Flutter apps are built using Dart. So if you know Dart programming language, then you can build the Flutter apps very easily. Any more questions? So is it a cross-platform app? Yes. It is a cross-platform framework because you just write code once and it is going to compile and run on multiple applications on multiple platforms like Mac OS, Windows OS, iOS, Android, and also Linux, and the web as well. So just write the code once and your app is going to run on all of these platforms. So yes, it is a cross-platform framework. Any more questions? Okay, so looks like those were all the questions. So my socials will be shared with you. If you're getting started with Flutter and if you come across any doubts or anything, you can always reach out to me. I will be more than happy to help you. And yeah, you always look out for courses and start with the courses. I wish you all the best. Thank you.